comes up in my feed today on my memory from Facebook. Media bias. Look at that.
He called them Eagles.
I'm Miranda Vijo Casanova.
I'm Miranda
Welcome to
Vijo
WGET.
Casanova. Welcome to WGET. We have a great show for you today, so stick around and watch it.
My name is Mark Roberts. I was born May 7th, 1965 at Baptist Hospital and adopted at birth by the Roberts family, who reared me and raised me on the west side where I still live. I worked mainly for two stations in town. WJKS was the ABC affiliate. I did about 7 years there, between 5 and 7. It wasn't constant employment. I had times off where I was going to school. And then from December of '93 until July of 2002, I worked at the NBC station WTLV.
So, during this interview, we'll be discussing the mean world syndrome. It is a term by George Gerbner, who is a sociologist, and it is the phenomenon whereby violence-related content of mass media makes viewers believe the world is more dangerous than it is. So with that being said, do you think watching violence on TV will make people more violent?
The question's kind of splinters off. You initially asked, does it affect, or does it make, I don't think it makes more people more violent because people have free will. They can decide to be violent. Does it affect them? Yes, because we used to talk about this in class. If it bleeds, it leads. And for a city the size of Jacksonville to have multiple newscasts lead with murders every day makes some people feel like they're in a dangerous world. My children, now that I live on the west side, every stabbing, shooting, car crash, house fire seems to be on the west side or north side, so they think I live in a dangerous neighborhood. And it's taken me months, almost a year, to convince them that they're safe. You know, so the way the media portrays it is out of proportion as to what the real world is. For most people, not for everyone. Some people do live in very violent neighborhoods.
Do you think violence on media affects the way people feel insecurity-wise?
Yes, that's what I was talking about. Because my daughter's just turned 15. And when she does watch the news or hear if it's on in the background at someone else's house and she hears shooting on the west side, well, Daddy lives on the west side. You know, west side is hundreds of square miles. I think in the year and a half that I've been living where I've been, there's been one shooting that was within a mile of my house. But for her, Daddy lives in a dangerous part of town.
Now, do you believe that the media wishes to control the minds of the people?
Oh boy, there's that conspiracy slippery slope. I don't know if it's a conscious effort. I don't want to get into puppet masters and that kind of thing, but there seems to be an agenda. Even if it's nothing other than good old greed, that, you know, bad news sells. William Randolph Hearst, the great publisher, you know, once said, you know, you provide the prose, I'll provide the war. And, you know, there have been stations, CNN years ago had a show called The Good News Show, and nobody watched it because it was boring. People want to watch the bad news. And that's sad, because that's not, you know, a lot of local news in particular now is focused on things that affects a minuscule part of the population. A car crash, even if it's fatal, only really affects the people who are in the car and their family. It doesn't affect me.
Do you think that the media creates these stories and headlines some of these stories to purposefully segregate us and cause the commotion?
That one I'll say yes. Whether directly or indirectly, again, they do it. NBC got caught, and you can look this up, during the Trayvon Martin murder trial. NBC ran what they said was the 9/11 call of George Zimmerman. Mm-hmm. And on their version, paraphrase it, you hear, George Zimmerman, what's your emergency? I'm the neighborhood watch guy, this kid in my neighborhood. I think he's black, which that makes him sound racist. First thing he says is, I'm here to protect the neighborhood. This black kid's in my neighborhood. Then you hear the full 911 call. 9/11, what's your emergency? George Zimmerman, I'm a neighborhood watch guy. There's some guy in my neighborhood. I don't know what he's doing here. Can you describe him, sir? Is he black, white, Hispanic? I think he's black. Well, that's very different. That's extremely different, because he was asked to describe him. So why did NBC do that? Now, they'll tell you that, well, they edited for time. Really? It's like 6-second difference, or less. So don't give me time. NBC in particular has been caught multiple occasions twisting the news. They tried to do a story on a type of pickup truck that was exploding on impact, and they were doing their tests and they weren't exploding. And this producer knew he was going to get in trouble because they were spending hundreds of thousands of dollars buying these trucks. So they got caught putting igniters in the gas tank so they would explode for their video. There you're affecting a major multi-billion-dollar company and the safety of thousands of Americans. CBS, during the 2000 election, Dan Rather gets caught using fake documents that said George Bush went AWOL during his National Guard time. They were trying to sway a presidential election with truly fake news. Now, eventually he lost his job, but CBS didn't fire him right away when it came out that he knew that it was fake. So here's a national news anchor intentionally, deliberately telling the American public lies about the leading presidential candidate for the Republicans.
So how has media personally affected your life and your own opinions?
Well, it's affected my own opinions because I've seen them lie. I've seen them outright lie. I've seen them lie by omission of stories. I've seen them lie by twisting stories. It's the main reason, I mean, on a personal level, why I worked in sports. I hated the fact that you couldn't find the truth. In sports, you may not like the truth, but there's the scoreboard. It doesn't lie. There's a winner, there's a loser. Game over. Go home. And I always felt more comfortable on a local level, how I felt more comfortable asking a millionaire athlete how he felt about losing the big game than I did about asking some guy who lost 3 kids in a house fire. And I've had to do both. And I've had to walk up and put that microphone in there and say, I'm sorry, sir, what are you feeling right now? Can you talk to us? What happened? As opposed to, hey, dude, you were an idiot. You threw an interception on 4th and goal from the 2. How do you feel? I let the team down. And I let my family down. So I've seen it with my own eyes. And the scary thing now is you look at the local news, at least here in Jacksonville, there's not a reporter that looks over 30 years old. This is a top 50 market of more than 1 million people and viewers. Nothing against young people, but these stations need to have those 40 and 50 and 60-year-old guys that know Hans Tansler and Jake Godbold, who these people are. Stories if you're 26 years old, yeah, but when you're at that event and you just think that's some old guy standing over there in the corner and you don't know that that's the guy who basically helped us get the Jaguars because you weren't here in 1985 or weren't even born in 1985, it's important. You watched TV History, Walter Cronkite, his producer Don Hewitt, admitted that Walter set a bad precedent. He became a news celebrity, and they made money off selling his show. And now news anchors make, the one on the networks are making 7+ figure and sometimes 8-figure salaries.
Hi, my name is Shane Colley, and I am the producer here at WGET, Fleming Island High School's newscast. I also am working on filming a documentary, and I do several side pieces, and I've filmed for an animal shelter and done a police accreditation video for the Clay County Sheriff's Office.
Okay, so in this interview we're going to be talking about the Mean World Syndrome and how it affects mass media. So for this, the Mean World Syndrome is a term by George Gerbner, who is a sociologist, and is the phenomenon whereby violence-related content of mass media makes viewers believe that the world is more dangerous than it is today. And, So by this, first question is, do you think watching violence on TV will make people more violent?
I wouldn't say necessarily that it would make them more violent. I think that it gives the, you begin to realize that violence exists and almost this, disenchantment, almost. That's more of a positive term than I want it to be. But it's about how it doesn't affect you as much as it does, because even, death is so common in TV, death is so common on the news. I hear somebody dies every single day. So even when people die who are not necessarily close to me, but in my life at some point, sometimes it's almost non-existent. I know that person's gone, but death is so apparent that it gives this illusion that, it's kind of like they just moved away. This is something that happens every day, why should I care? And that is definitely a negative implication upon our society.
Okay. Do you think violence on media affects the way people feel insecurity-wise?
I feel like if insecurity-wise you mean that it might point to like more like suicidal thoughts and areas on that direction.
Insecurity-wise, I mean being afraid to go out of your house because it's nighttime, being afraid to, because it has to go along with the mean world syndrome. So feeling afraid to go do things because you've seen things happen on the news. So being afraid to walk in a back alleyway.
Yes, I definitely agree with that, and I also agree that it even goes beyond that at some point, because you'll have people who are afraid of cancer because every time they turn on the TV you hear like, oh, the celebrity now has cancer, or oh, this and this about cancer. Like, you hear it every single day. Like, you turn on your TV and you hear alternatives to chemotherapy. You hear about how marijuana has cancer treating effects, and you hear all of that. So it's almost like it's an ever-present fear.
Right. Now, do you believe the media wishes to control the minds of the people?
I wouldn't say it believes it wants to control the minds of the people in essence, so as a whole, but there are definitely the bigger stations like CNN and Fox News and other ones that are like it are definitely trying to control the people to see their viewpoint. Because when you have control over these people, even if that's not how they were created, you get this feeling of, well, I really, really want this. So you have, like, for instance, the 2016 election. CNN pushed Trump is evil, Hillary is good, let's keep going. Fox basically kind of took Hillary and tried to demolish her and elevated Trump, despite now being somewhat critical of Trump as much as they probably have ever been on a Republican president. And then you have CNN, who, again, they're back to this way of just playing the game they want to play. So they're playing a game like chess, but other news stations, the ones like you find on YouTube or the ones that you find that are kind of more secular, you have this genuine, like, small pop, but it's like big businesses are supposed to be corrupt, small pop businesses aren't. Like, it's the same thing. Sorry.
You're fine. Do you think that the news and the media promotes certain stories to cause more elevated drama and segregation between certain subcultures and groups?
I definitely agree with that. I would think that it pushes that divide, and especially to make it where there's no middle. Because when you have that moderate, the moderate is the person who looks at both sides and finds the story. So you're having someone who's going between the viewers and deciding still, but if you can push that divide, then you don't want anyone, like, that person's like, I don't want to watch CNN, that's Democratic, I don't want to watch that, or the opposite, I don't want to watch Fox News, that's totally Republican. And you have this adversity, and then you start these arguments, and you actually start kind of doing the opposite of what the media is supposed to do. You start making people ignore things that are happening just for the fact that they want to.
How has working with the media changed you? And this being different from Robert's working in actual media, how has learning about media and wanting to pursue a job in media changed the way that you feel?
It's giving me the realization that not everything you see or hear is what you're supposed to believe. I pursue everything in media that I possibly can, from photography, film, news, and I'm even trying to get on this school newspaper that we just started founding. Actually going to a meeting that today. So for me, it's all about trying to get these facts and understanding that these people do have agendas they push. You have the social commentary in many movies, which, despite them not being this like, oh, well, welcome to your daily newscast, they still push these agendas, whether they be good or bad. And sometimes that gives negative implications because they don't do a good job, and you get a mess.
How has the media personally affected your life and your personal opinions?
It's personally affected my life in the way that I almost don't believe anything anymore. I'm very skeptical, I'm very cynical. I think that the world that I'm in could be better, but it also gives that almost illusion that it can't. And that these people, and you also get this, like, again, it divides me from a lot of people because I'm a very, argumentative person, let's say. So I tend to catch conflict with people, and while I am compromised, like, I will compromise, I tend to see people in a way that they refuse to, just for the fact that when you have media that's so one-sided and you have that everywhere, it's impossible to see people as someone who's willing to come to a middle ground.
That's all. Thank
All right,
you.
Thank you.